Good morning and welcome to Competitive Advantage with Noah Bedome and Colin Sherman. He's Noah and I am Colin. How you doing, Noah?
I'm good. How are you, Colin?
I am great. Do you think we should do one episode where I'm Noah and you're Colin? Do you think that would be
okay? All right. What does that look like?
I have no idea.
We'll have to figure it out. That'd be great.
Okay. I'm not shaving my head. I'm really excited to be 45 and have all this hair.
I'm gonna send you a flesh-colored shower cap.
Oh, there you go. I'm always amazed in movies when the actors wear bald caps and it doesn't look like their hair is underneath it. Like I always think that that's kind of wild as a
lot of actors, they just shave them though, and then put the bald cap over anyway.
That's true too. Okay, so I woke up to disappointment.
Every day of my life.
Every day, in every way, my life gets a little bit sadder. No, I kid. I had been told by so many nerds yesterday that I had Data Slate to wake up to. And it's funny how I like 40K a lot right now, and there's plenty to talk about. I don't need a Data Slate to talk about, but if you tell me there's going to be a Data Slate, then suddenly I'm super engaged. So I have one thing to say about this.
Disappointed!
Let's do it one more time. Let's do it one more time.
Yeah.
Disappointed!
Okay. So that's how I feel. But it is Wednesday. We're going to talk about 40K. There's a lot to talk about. You went to a tournament. I have some thoughts about you at that tournament to share.
Okay.
Not knowing really anything about it. I have done my project of playing a new army several times.
Oh,
and I want to talk about that. But first, we should go through the good, the bad, and the ugly. After we say the thing that we're supposed to say, hey, Noah, what did you do for 40K this week, other than the tournament?
Actually, interesting. I did this exercise where I know we're getting a new Data Slate, but I deleted every single list in my Warhammer app.
Oh.
And I started from A, and I'm going through every faction, and I'm just making as many lists that I would personally like to play for that faction, even if that attachment is bad, for every faction that I own.
Okay.
And I still got a few to go, but I've made a whole bunch of actually pretty cool lists. And part of this is because I don't really want to play Green Tide at Tacoma, and the further reason is that Tacoma Open does not enforce clocks. You can start a clock and agree with your opponent to use it, but that clock actually isn't enforceable. The only clock that's enforceable at GW events is if you don't meet your milestones in the last kind of basically like 45 minutes of the round, they'll start a clock. That's the only clock that's enforceable. There's too much chance for somebody to be like accuse me of slow play or whatever when I'm playing 140 models. If I don't have another option, I will play Tide. However, I'm looking at other things. So I just traded some product that I'm not using for a Votann army because I've always wanted to play Votann. It's already built. I paint it when it comes in. I'm super stoked about that. I'm looking at Lions and a bunch of other different factions. And I'm going to try to test some lists on TTS and stuff over the next couple of weeks.
That's fun. I think it'd be neat to go through the lists on a show.
Yeah, sure.
And just talk through what they mean. I don't think we do that today.
No, that's fine.
But I think that would be really neat. I played 40K. That I had not done that in a while. I had made content about 40K. I had not made 40K.
You and Chuck made sweet 40K together.
That's right. We made lovely 40K together. I also played Alex McDougall. So we'll talk about that in a little while. But what I was going to share is I am loving making the 40K lore crash course, and I need people to watch it.
Okay,
I know it's funny. I know it's engaging. I need you guys to go watch it. So they're 20-minute episodes. They're like actual shows. They're edited. There's stuff going on. It's not just a podcast. And it is a silly, fun, and hopefully interesting recap of the 40K lore for me to learn it. And it's pretty fun, and I hope you guys will watch it. You can find it on our channel. Okay.
Can I share something before we get into good, bad, and ugly? Can I share something that is not 40K that I've been doing?
Yeah.
So my kid plays D&D, right?
Okay.
And I own a game store.
Mm-hmm. Also true.
And recently, the person who runs the D&D pods at my game store no longer works at my game store.
Right.
And so I have been running kids D&D on Monday. And so the first one that I ran, it was my kid, her friend, and one other kid who randomly showed up, who had never been to D&D before. And we had a great game. And this time, that kid brought two more of their friends. So I ran a D&D game that was, and Audrey's friend didn't come. I ran a D&D game that was 4 girls of the ages of 10 to 12 playing in a setting of, Magic Bloomborough, which basically is a setting that's like Redwall, where everybody is like mice or rats or otters. Everyone's animals. It's like a very Redwall setting. But when you come to this world, you get converted into an animal. And then all of their weather phenomena and stuff are things called calamity beasts, like giant elemental monsters. They're like predatory animals like bears and jackals and that kind of stuff.
Well, that's neat.
It has been incredibly fun to run a very not so heavy on the crunchy rules game where 4 kids of 10 to 12 are just having fun, adventuring wildly through this very, picturesque, crazy fantasy setting. It has been the highlight of my week, actually. So
that's amazing.
Different.
And I like that they're all girls.
Yeah, I did not.
That's neat. That's been an interesting thing for me over the decades that I've been, playing or tangentially paying attention to D&D. D&D, Magic, everything. It's really lovely to see how many more women are involved in the generation below us, you and I, compared to our generation. Well, I think are you 10 years younger than me? So if I separate us out.
You're 40 this year.
Oh, congratulations on that when it happens. I'm 45, so we're close enough.
Yeah.
I think that for me, there were no girls in the science and math classes. There were no girls at the game stores playing D&D. There were no girls at the Magic the Gathering tournaments. There were no girls at the Warhammer 40K tournaments. There were not nerd girls that were comfortable exposing themselves. That's terrible. That's not the right phrase at all. There weren't nerd girls that were comfortable going out and engaging in D&D and Magic with all of us publicly. So I love that has happened. It's so
great. You're like the top of Gen X, and I'm like the bottom, the bottom of the millennials, right?
I'm at the end of Gen X. Yeah.
Yeah. That's right. And I'm at the beginning of the millennial, right?
Yeah.
And so I think it was for instance, in my high school, we had one female person, non-male person, in our kind of math, science, technology, competitive club thing that went off and did built bridges and technology competitions. We had one, and she was awesome. I feel like it was a lot of the pioneering for the current generation of people who are, maybe 10 years younger than me, coming to the game store. The pioneering non-male nerd people were kind of in the millennial group, and now we're seeing a lot of it kind of kick off more. And it's also, when you and I were kids, D&D was also seen as a lot of games, Magic 2 were seen as the devil, right? There was a big, it was evil. Now, the family that brought these kids in are very you would look at them and compared to any other family with small children, and they would just look like all of the other ones, right? Like not in a bad way. It's just there was nothing weird about the situation. It
Right.
was just, oh, D&D, great, D&D. And the D&D is like a mainstream part of like book culture now.
Well, that movie was super successful, right? With all the big name actors. Not the one a gazillion years ago with Marlon Wayans, but the current one.
We do not acknowledge. Okay, cool. Yeah, sweet. So
I think that's really, really cool.
me too.
Okay. The good, the bad, and the ugly. What is good about 40K right now from the news?
New mission pack.
Okay. Is that good?
Yeah.
Okay. So far, the only
it's
thing
like-
I've heard is people being snide about the couple missions that are worse. I haven't looked at them in detail, but it sounds like recover assets is harder. So we have that to look forward to.
Yeah, I think that like so here's my take on why I think it's good. So
Why don't we recap? Why don't you start with what's different, like just at the highest of levels?
Yeah. So the biggest difference is actually the thing I think is good is that
Okay.
in the current state, when you generate a mission, you get a primary, a deployment, and we'll call it a mission rule or a twist, right? You get a modifying rule that changes how the game is played, right? So that modifying rule could be you don't get to use core stratagems in the beginning. It also could be there's a whole bunch of stuff, and some of them are good and some of them are bad, and some of them are grossly unbalanced and some of them don't matter. In the new version, we have removed the twist entirely from matched play. The twist stuff still exists for narrative play, and when we generate a mission, it's literally a deployment and a primary. Some of the primaries have been adjusted. It's great. They left Unexploded Ordnance is still here. We still have 40K football. It'll never make it into competitive events for the most part. It's fine. But the replacement is they have created this thing called the Challenger deck. And the Challenger deck is a 9-card shared deck between the two players that you can only draw off if you're 6 or more points behind at the start of the battle round. And each of those cards has a stratagem and has a mission, and you can pick either the mission or the stratagem. The mission will get you 3 points and usually relatively easy to accomplish. The stratagem could be situationally very effective for what's going on in your game to give you a potential chance to jump ahead. So all of the chaotic difference, weirdness that would get from like a twist and also from like a gambit or a secret mission, all of that has been rolled together to create the Challenger deck. So as players get behind, if the game is not very close, we're going to have interesting new things developed during the game. Well, if the game is close, it's going to stay basically a regular secondary, normal deployment and mission. So I think that lends itself very well to the kind of spirit of 40K. Yeah, a couple of the missions and the secondaries I think still need a little work. It's always going to be a thing in progress. We've lost some secondaries that were, in my opinion, not great. I think Behind Enemy Lines is gone now. Is that right? I believe that's gone. But a couple of them are gone, and a couple new ones have showed up, which is great. I do miss Containment. Containment will, forever I will long for Containment. But I think generally it's better because it is simpler with the chaos component being something that is directly part of how we play the game and not about something that changes fundamentally how we build for the mission.
Yeah.
Because the missions are a little more vanilla, but still interesting. It means there's less, hey, I look at the mission, what missions are we doing? Okay, so I'm building my list specifically for that. It's a little bit less of that and more of the understanding of, in any of my games, these significant chaotic things could occur. How do I understand and prepare for them if they do occur? I'm going to see 3 of these 9 Challenger cards a game probably.
And those released this Saturday? Okay. Well, we're playing. I've got 5 people coming over for 40K on Saturday. So I will get to see that, and I will play at least 2 games of it, hopefully 3, and I'll report back next week on what I think.
There is a non-zero chance a Noah may materialize during the period of time.
I try not to hold my breath.
I know. I'm
Just in general because it's a bad idea. And then you have to remember to breathe. And you have to somehow pivot from remembering to breathe to doing it natively. And I hate that. So we're not going to do that.
Do you have a good?
I do. I do have a good. Coming up with a good. All jokes aside, I looked at a little bit about the tournament results last weekend, and I love seeing all the different chaos. I think that chaos in general usually has crappy rules. That's something that I've been incredibly open about over the time that I've been
very
doing
verbal. Yes.
Well, because a lot of it's been stupid. There's been entire Death Guard codexes that are defeated by measuring 17 inches. Like
that is not the case currently.
No. And so, it's really interesting to have. I think the perception that you mentioned is that kind of people know what EC is at this point. It's kind of solved a little bit. We don't talk about that right now. But even with that, you're seeing EC out there. I haven't seen EC as an army in tournaments in a gazillion years. World Eaters are out. They've got a bunch of cool stuff. It sounds like which detachment is best for them is completely in debate. I love that. I think that's great. If a book comes out and people don't know which detachment is best, GW probably did a better job than normal. I think that the Death Guard looks like it's overperforming. Death Guard might deserve that a little bit. I'm going to play into Death Guard on Saturday, which I'm excited about. So it should be great. So in general, I think my good is that we released all these. Well, I wrote all these chaos rolls. No. All of these chaos rolls got released, and it seems like there's excellent variety in there. Nothing is, launch 9th, 10th edition Eldar. Like, none of it is just wildly broken from the way it sounds. I don't know if Noah agrees, but I'm really excited about that. I wasn't thrilled with where the meta was at, and I'm really excited to see the meta get turned on its head, especially if we would have had a data slate today.
I think the data slate's going to do a lot for sure. And I agree. I think that, the diversity of lists, especially with all of the chaos stuff happening right now, is amazing. I think Death Guard are overtuned. I don't think it's by a lot. I honestly think it's probably like fix the rapid ingress on Death Shroud Terminators so that it's not busted, and all those, and then the shooty bio launcher drones go up by 20 points each. And I honestly think we're kind of like there, right? Okay. So like Death Guard are kind of, and this actually it'll be in my bad. One of the things that is in my bad is a couple of these things on Death Guard. But other than that, like I think we're good. Like I think it's really good spot. Even for like EC, I have a couple EC lists that I generated during my list generation that are like different than what everyone else is playing on EC, because people are adapting to how to actually play against EC now. Mm-hmm. About how you have to screen with big things, play reverse 40K. And that's had me looking at things like, why don't we just not play Coterie then? Why don't we play Peerless Bladesman, where we just choose lethal or sustained? We don't get the rerolls, but just choose lethal or sustained every time we charge. We've got a bunch of cool combat tricks. Yeah. Experimenting with a knight with EC, with a Chaos Knight with shooty guns with EC.
Okay.
Lots of cool stuff. I think there's a lot of design space.
Don't we know that the Knight Codexes are next?
Yeah, but like we don't necessarily know if they'll come out before Tacoma Open.
Oh, sure. I was just.
Yeah, the Knight Codexes may very well be announced on. It is.
Tacoma Open is late July for people that don't know. In the Pacific Northwest, it's our biggest tournament of the year. My friends get extremely hype about it. Personally, I think that it sounds like a heck of a good time, but 10 games of 40K sounds awful. So the 10 games of 40K is if you want to win. You get punished by having to play additional 40K.
Yeah, the reward for good work is more work.
Yeah. But it's a huge tournament. I'm going to try to go, but we're trying to sell our house. And so I might literally be moving that weekend. No one knows. So I'm going to wait till a couple weeks out to make that decision. But I'm going to start prepping like I'm going because that's fun for me.
The design space in general for all these different chaos codexes, I think, is great. The experimentation and stuff. There's nearly every faction has a playable list that I think can go win an event. So I think it's great right now. Yeah, I think you hit it right on the spot. Balance is good. Hopefully the data slate makes it better.
Yep. The bad. First of all, I would say waking up to no data slate.
Yeah, that was pretty bad.
That bummed me out. Just one more.
Disappointed!
That's just one of my favorite things ever. He's reading the direction in the script of how he's supposed to behave. For those that are wondering, that's the joke. It says disappointed in parentheses about how he's supposed to do the line, but Kevin Sorbo is an idiot, and so he reads disappointed very loudly. I just love it. Anyways, we didn't know what an idiot he is then. We know what an idiot he is now. He's wanted everyone to make sure that they know. Okay, so the bad, other than Kevin Sorbo, the bad is some of the stratagems and special abilities that currently exist because of the new Chaos Codexes. I'm going to talk about the Bloodletter strat in detail, so we don't need to go into it right now, but the World Eater's Bloodletter strat needs a conversation, so we're going to talk about that in a little while. It's important that we have a conversation on that because there's a bunch of stuff about it that's interesting. Yeah, so it sounds like you're going to say the same thing about Death Guard. Maybe you could use a tweak.
Yeah, you made a general point. I think there's a couple rules, so I'm going to do a two-part. So there's a couple things I just don't think should be present in 10th edition.
Okay.
I don't think Feel No Pain should ever be a thing for any reason.
Okay.
I think Feel No Pain should never be better than 5-up. I think a Feel No Pain is okay against mortal wounds. I do not think a 4-up Feel No Pain should ever be against normal damage.
Yeah, okay.
I don't think critical 5s should be a mechanic that we use. I think it's too easy for that mechanic to become too prevalent, which is one of the things that's happening right now.
Well, the armies that have it automatically use it, right? Right. Like when it was still good, it's still used in Space Marines like crazy.
Yeah, if you can get criticals, if you can get critical 5s and get like lethal sustained 5s, which Death Guard can, it's pretty crazy. So that being said, if you look at Death Guard, the other thing is 6-inch rapid ingress is also a thing that should be in the game. I know GW agrees because they eroded all of the 6-inch deep strike abilities to not allow rapid ingress, and then printed the Death Guard Codex with a strat that allows you to, with an ability on the Death Shroud Terminators. Their ability is, if you are afflicted, they can deep strike at 6 inches rather than 9 of an afflicted model. However, it doesn't say that you can't use that during rapid ingress. So if you have an afflicted model, you can rapid them at 6, which is really, really busted, considering this is a 5-inch move unit that hits like a freight train.
Yeah.
Right. Other than that, and that
might just be fixed. Like, also the new rules, several of them say that they have 3-inch deep strike abilities. Like the Zangor detachment, which I'll talk about, has a 3-inch deep strike ability in their codex. Well, we played it as 6 because we know that all 3 inches are overridden by 6. Yeah. Maybe the same thing is the case for rapid ingress, and we should be playing it that way, and it will get fixed quickly.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
So there's little things like that, but I mean, it does make things like Death Guard right now a little powerful and hard to play against, but I don't think they're to the point where they're completely they're not ruining the meta. If you look at the results, like Tactical Tortoise does his Monday show where he talks about all the results from the weekend, and there were a million different codexes winning a million different events. Death Guard won a couple of them. Sweet. It's not like old school Eldar days. So I don't think it's that bad, but it still could be better.
Well, and there's the difference between what's winning the events and what feels terrible at the middle tables, right?
That's true.
And, I had a game at LVO years ago where I had brought the grossest 8th edition Ynnari army I possibly could because I wanted to win the event. And in the second round, I played against a Space Wolves player who was absolutely there for a good time. And his army was beautiful, and it was, people were named, and it was great. And he hated my rule set so much that he lost his temper in his I'm just there to have fun. So there are rules, and Yunari did not win that event. It was not in the top 8.
Oh, that was the one where you and I both went to the same LVO at the same time. Is that when Iron Hands were busted?
Yeah, Broviathan. That sounds right.
That's when you and I both went to.
I just remember the last time I went to a tournament went to LVO. I took a Yunari list that I thought was perfect because I had wrecked everyone locally, and I went and it was actually bad, and it was net listed like crazy, which was one of the more fun things that had ever happened to me. I made this list. No one else was playing it. 9 of us had it at LVO. We all did badly. Sorry, everybody. I went 4-2, and I was like the best of the group. So sorry, everybody, about that. Okay, moving on to the ugly. I don't think I have an ugly.
I think my only real ugly is that there's a lot of little micro problems in the 40K rule set right now that have persisted and that obviously can get fixed with the data slate, but they're persisting for a long time with specific factions. So, for instance, AdMech, even at its best, has continued to be very hard to play, very low performing. Even at its best, still not great. Sisters has been struggling with balance for a very long time, and so has it's either wildly up or wildly down. And then obviously we're getting new codexes. Who knows what that'll do? But Imperial Knights is also one of those ones that has been wildly up, wildly down. Yep. And then Drukhari has also struggled a lot. I think my ugly is that there are a couple of factions where you can win an event with almost every faction. There are a couple of factions that either have languished in kind of unsupport or have oscillated so widely between, for instance, right now, Imperial Knights has a 57% win rate. Nothing changed in the book. What happened was the meta adjusted slightly, and turned out the meta was just not good at killing giant robots who want to punch you in the face, who have a feel no pain.
The meta walked around a corner into Dark Alley, and there were Imperial Knights there, and the meta was like, oh, damn.
Right. But tomorrow, the meta could be, everybody has the equivalent of 3 Fire Dragons in their list, and then suddenly they're a 35% win rate, right? That could happen tomorrow. And that's Knights have been living that. Drukhari on the other side. Drukhari at their best lately are low 40s, and they are struggling, but because of the fundamental structure of their army, the meta and a bunch of other things with 10th edition are kind of pushing them out. They're just kind of too soft, right?
Yeah,
a lot of objectives require you to stand on them. To stand on them. What Eldars, what Dark Eldar are not good at? Standing on objectives.
Elves in general.
Now, Dark Eldar can park 3 boats, force you to kill 3 boats, and then bleed all over the objective.
What does your opponent do with the rest of their 80% of their shooting phase after they killed all the boats?
This is the problem.
Yes, Raiders and Venoms, not durable. I think that's a great take, Noah. Let's take a moment and talk about the factions we most want to see helped in the data slate and why. I think that's a great ugly topic, don't you think?
I do. I think.
Let me finish your Drukhari thoughts because I'm a Drukhari player.
Yep.
I've played Drukhari some. I've played the Wager and the Sky Splinter, and I think that the thing about Drukhari is the rules are really neat, but it's not enough. And when they do that, it can be super frustrating. Like, my rules are so cool, I'm so excited to play them, but they aren't good enough. Are they? Excuse me. Are they too soft and too fragile? Do they not hit hard enough? I think Drukhari has both of those problems, and I think that there's something that absolutely needs to be addressed. Noah stepped away for a second. Oh, Noah's back. Okay, your turn. I talked about Drukhari. What do you got?
Well, we'll point out real quick. Kara Quinn mentioned that one of the uglies should probably be that a lot of the mission cards are already sold out and unorderable for the new season.
Oh.
So a lot of people's only option to play the new season will be win the cards, make their way into the Goonhammer battle app. So that does suck. That's pretty bad. I think it's something that is so critical. Now, what is cool when you play at things like Tacoma Open, they literally give you a pack of cards.
Yeah, and then I'll have them.
So that's the easiest way to get the mission back is to go play at one of the opens because it's just guaranteed that you're going to get one.
Yeah, so you only have to pay about $150 to get the cards. It's not
which should this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
The other one is AdMech, right? So the thing about AdMech is AdMech doesn't have. They don't really actually have a unit that is an overwhelmingly good shooting unit other than Cataphront Breachers, and that's not exactly the same thing. They're a little bit slower. They don't have a high volume of shots. They can do really good shots, but it's like they're not an amazing, oppressive shooting unit, but they're fine. All their other good shooting units have very significant weaknesses. Robots have a lot of problems. Then you have the cool Dizzy tanks. Well, you either have an indirect gun that's fine, or you have an anti-tank gun that's very low volume. That's okay, I guess, right? So they're great. They're fine. They service. They do fine, but none of the shooting is that great. The melee isn't necessarily that great. They do have a horde component, but it's also not done exceptionally well. And then on top of all that, a lot of their rules are very complicated to use. And they're one of their best attachments, Halo Creed, all of the enhancements and stratagems trigger in the command phase, your command phase. So you have to plan an entire battle round in your command phase and be prepared, right? I think AdMech, we really should be higher performing than they are. I'm biased. I have 18,000 points of AdMech I would like to play.
And they're really pretty, by the way.
Yeah, thank you.
Of your armies, I think that your AdMech might be my favorite paint job.
I like my AdMech and my Stodes a lot.
Oh, I haven't seen your Stodes in a long time. I can't weigh on them.
They're a color shift rose gold that looks like normal gold when you look at it, and then when the light catches it, you see pinks and rose color across the plates, and then blue capes, orange and red highlights on the freehand on the capes, and then green shimmering power plates.
It's amazing the effort you can put in when you only have 16 models.
Yeah, they look great.
I think that I would add Eldar, Craft-World Eldar to the list. And that we talked a little bit about this last week, but I listened to that clip a number of times as I edited it, and I want to say it better. So the issue with the Eldar Codex is the rules are great and super interesting and super fun. And the Ynnari rules are even more fun and even more interesting. The issue with the Ynnari rules is they are the perfect example of a middle table monster. Because there are a lot of factions that look at the Ynnari rules and say, I don't know, and then lose. And my problem with this is that because of that, Ynnari is the only thing being taken to tournaments that's being at all successful. And that's getting worse as people come out that are too durable to basically hang with Ynnari and punish them back. Also, there's a lot of close combat armies that don't care about shooting Ynnari. Ynnari doesn't like that at all. So I'm in a situation with Craft-World Eldar where I have to play Ynnari, and I don't think Ynnari is a good matchup because there's a number of bad matchups for it, or good thing for me. That book is so great and written so well. The units have such interesting abilities. The Windrider detachment's cool. The Seer Council detachment's cool. The Wraith detachment that you've played is cool. None of that is competitive because the army is balanced around Ynnari right now. If Ynnari didn't exist, Eldar would need buffs and point reductions in the current meta.
I'm playing the Wraith list in this round of Vibe Check.
I'm having the biggest allergy attack, so I keep muting. Yeah, so I think there's other armies that are probably in that same situation. I just happen to know about Craft-World Eldar as the one that I play, but I think there's other armies too that are being balanced based off their best thing. You know, if you reduce points on Eldar, you make Ynnari a massive problem. So what I would like to see in the data slate is Ynnari nerfed. I would like to see it nerfed relatively firmly. And then I would like to see the rest of Eldar improved. I don't think I'm going to get that, but that's what I would like. I think that's very unlikely, but that's what I'm looking for. I'm worried Ynnari's not get addressed at all because it's not one of the top monsters right now.
I have this idea that I think the detachments should change the value of some units, or that detachments themselves should have a points value commensurate with their rule. Because one of the problems is, like, I don't know, Thunderwolf Cav, let's say, right? It's not a big deal right now, but Wolf Jail was kind of a terror for a little while. Thunderwolf Cav, before they went up a little bit, Thunderwolf Cav were really good in Stormlands. Really good. Not that great in everything else.
Yeah.
Really good in Stormlands. So maybe in Stormlands, they're just 10 points more.
Right.
Right? Like, I think this is a chronic GW balancing problem. Is GW has a real issue with, one, balancing all the detachments and things for all of the variety of internal balance units, right? And two, has a real problem with balancing. Man, I just had it. This is a very important thought. So internal balance units and ADHD strikes again.
Okay.
I had a second point that was very important, and I was like, "This is the primary point," and then I came up with the secondary point of
well, let me tangent for just a second. I think that what's really interesting is when there is a victim of that thing that's too strong, right? And I think a really good example of that is, this was pointed out to me yesterday. I hadn't even thought about it. The Drukhari current points reflect Ynnari. There are things in Drukhari that are being punished from the previous Ynnari rules, where Ynnari was just grabbing Drukhari units and was too powerful.
Oh.
So not that long ago, people were playing Ynnari and they were grabbing Drukhari units in, and because that was so good, things like Reapers? No, what are they called? What are they called? Scourges. Things like Scourges that were so amazing in Eldar because they were gaining rerolls. This is before, right? Eldar from before. Because they were gaining rerolls that they didn't have in Drukhari, they were so powerful that they were in Ynnari, and their points went up because of it, and Drukhari players were frustrated. There's a number of units like that. The points for Drukhari haven't been adjusted. Ynnari solved that by having its own versions of those data sheets with its own points so that it doesn't have that problem. So there's stuff like that where a problem happened and they addressed it in a particular way. That problem doesn't exist anymore, yet the addressment is still there.
Well, yeah, actually, that's the point I was going to make too, is that it's like, if you adjust everything because one detachment, if you either ruin the rules in the detachment becomes unplayable, doesn't potentially lift up the other detachments. If you increase the other detachments but don't reduce the first detachment, then you just maybe end up with more broken detachments.
Yeah, I agree.
Or if you raise the points on units that are good, you may just also make all the other detachments worse.
Right.
There has to be more levers, right? That's what the point I was going to make, is that having levers like these things cost more per detachment. If you take this detachment, you pay essentially a compensation cost of points because this rule is slightly better. If you look across all the detachments, some detachment rules are just strictly better than others. And that doesn't make sense if they're all free. It does make sense if they're cheaper, if they have different points. So a good example would be, if we look at the Admech Codex. We have this vehicle detachment that has some pretty good strats and is okay, but the detachment rule is just only that robots get the faction rule. That's the only detachment rule. If that detachment rule was 30 points, right, or even free, and Hunter Enclave, which is like all of your Skitarii, which is basically every good model in the book, gets stealth, and then your ones that already have stealth get cover all the time. That could be like 50 or 60 points, because that is really, really good. Also, their strats are better, right? That's just a lot of stuff. So we either have to pay a tax for playing the better detachments.
Right.
What that means is like if we play the less powerful detachments, sometimes we get a whole nother unit or two, which is another way of buffing these other detachments.
Yeah, I like that. Okay. All right, should we move on?
Yeah, let's move on. We're
Do you
going
have
to talk.
any? Do you have any other armies that you really think need addressment? Which is a word that I've come up with that I'm now using.
Tau.
Yeah. Okay.
Tau.
Nobody-
The problem with the that's the other thing I was going to say. Tau. The other thing GW was really bad at is balancing armies that have that are one trick pony.
Yep.
Right. So Tau has always either been wildly overpowered or wildly underpowered, and it's because they're basically only a shooting army. I'll tell you how you balance Tau. Literally, this will fix Tau in a heartbeat. You build in the rule that every single battle suit during the combat phase gets to pick one gun they're equipped with, and they get a melee weapon with all of the same stats. You just get one. They get one weapon, so they
But
don't
only when they're charged.
sure, whatever it is.
No, I just like that better because otherwise they become an effective close combat army.
If in melee they had anything, even if it's like, okay, I pick my burst cannon, so I get 12 shots at 501, or I pick my Melta, so I get 2 shots at
Right.
8, 4, D6, whatever it is, right? If they had any type of combat that didn't require the list to bend over backwards, like taking the rampagers, that it would be much easier to weaken a little of their shooting, adjust a little of their moving, raise up some of their points.
Right.
Because it wouldn't be by doing a little of that you cripple the army.
Okay.
And I think that's a lot of these armies need to have not like a specialty in an area they're not good at, but like an out. A lot of armies do not have an out in an area they're not good at.
Okay.
And that creates issues on balancing.
Yeah. Okay. I agree with all of that.
Okay.
KR says, I'd like to see double or triple the amount of CP so they have room to price strats appropriately. Right now, it's basically 1 CP, occasionally 2 CP for a strat, no room to price correctly. That's fair. However, in 8th edition, we started with like 12 or 15 or 18 CP, and it was a little hard to manage. So I think that there's another side to your argument, but I like where you're at.
I agree.
I also think that 2 CP strats don't get used.
I think that half of I have this wild take that half of all strats should be 2 CP strats. So I think when you get a detachment, you should get 3 1-point strats. You should get 3 2-point strats, and that's it. You'll have your 3 best effects will be 2-point stratagems, and you'll have some other effects that are good. They'll be 1-point stratagems.
Noah would like you guys to not play with your good stratagems because they're too expensive.
I would like you to play with them because like the 3 really good ones are all 2 points, but you have to have a negative benefit. Good example is like fights first. There's a bunch of 1-point fight first strats. Those should be 2 CP, right? All of the strats that let you charge someone when they fall back from you are 2 CP.
Yeah.
Things that interact like that should be 2 CP.
Okay.
Cool. All right.
Do you want to talk about your tournament next, or do you want to talk about my 40K next?
We can talk about my tournament real quick because mine will be fast.
Okay, do it.
So I went to an event. It was really great. It was Hammer Time up in Kelowna in Canada. I brought my.
Did you wear hammer pants? Did anyone wear hammer pants?
No.
Oh,
I brought my Green Tide. I brought an anti-melee pack. So I have 240 points. It's flex points in my Green Tide list. Of that, I brought my anti-melee package, which is a battle wagon and a Boomdock Snazwagon, which basically is a Maleceptor for non-monster vehicles. So it just creates a 6-inch aura of -1 to be hit. Or -1 to hit. And so I went there with pretty high expectations. I played into Knights round 1 and put the hurt on them pretty hard. I played into McDougal round 2. We had a wild game that I ended up winning, but it was a 5-off because we're both playing armies that have really good profiles into each other, and we're both playing armies with 5-up invulnerable saves, and it's just a 5-off. There were some cool tricks. The Boomdock Snazwagon probably won me that game. So did the Battle Wagon. That's great. Then I played into Death Guard, and I beat them extremely hard. And then I played into Death Guard in round 4 against the current best ITC in Canada, and I lost by 6 points on Purge, going
You
first.
should use that person's name.
Oh, his name is Cass.
Okay.
Cass is super cool. He was a great player, wonderfully painted Death Guard army, really fun to play against. Very hard opponent.
Not to be confused with Kaz, also also a Canadian 40K player.
So Kaz is actually Cass also. So it's Kasra.
They're both Kasra?
No, one is just Cass.
Okay.
I'm looking up Kasra's name so that I don't do this wrong. Because him and his beautiful partner, so Kasra is Kasra.
Okay.
And then his beautiful partner goes by Chaz because her name is Sharon. But because that people often call him Kaz, but it's Cass Chaz. But anyway, so Cass is a good name for people who are good at playing 40K.
Okay.
So this Cass, it's very good. Had a great game. He got second on Purge, which is already pretty painful for me, and he ended up winning by 6 points. It was a great game. He at the end he told me that he's never had an orc player even get close, and that he had written our game off as a 20-0 when he walked up to the table. That made me feel pretty good about not letting that be the truth. Then I played against Stu Angel, and that was a great game. Other than the fact that I used the new order strat 3 times. I got 9 unscorable secondaries. Well, 8. I scored 1 secondary out of 9 cards that I saw in 3 turns. I lost that game, not by a lot. I lost that game. That was also a great game. That was against essentially the same list that I played against, played by Alex McDougal. So I went 3-2. My losses were against Stu, who's a member of Team Canada, and Cass, who's the ITC top player in Canada. So not a bad weekend for the Orcs. Generally, it was pretty good.
But how do you feel?
Good. It was a lot of fun. I want to win a golden ticket real bad.
I know.
But I'm more interested always in feeling like I did my best. And while the game against Stu, I felt he even said, he's like, no, I don't feel like I beat you. I feel like I could beat you, but like this card situation is what beat you, and I'd like to play another game sometime. Like, yeah, of course, great. But I'm going to be real vulnerable and honest for a minute, and then we'll talk about your World Eaters. I get to ride over with Brendan McKenzie, who was great. It was great to spend time with Brendan. But anyway, I sometimes have very loud imposter syndrome in basically everything I do in my life, whether it's information security, which is what I do for a living, or being a good dad, or playing 40K. And sometimes that imposter syndrome voice is really, really loud, right? Especially when you win or lose the first or second round of your event, and then you're playing against kind of medium skill players for a lot of the event, and you go X-1, and then you kind of feel like maybe the X-1 isn't like that, doesn't feel that legit, those kind of things. So this event was good because even though I lost my last 2 rounds, I played against really good players to get to a position where I could play against the best players, and I kept the games tight, played well, and gave my opponents very challenging puzzles to solve. Mm-hmm. And that is the thing I'm always striving for to play in the game, is just play my best game. And I do honestly feel like I played my best game over the week, and I feel good about it.
That's great. I like that a lot. If you could do it over again, and I could tell you you're going to perform the same and take something other than Green Tide, would you have preferred that?
No, Green Tide's really fun to play. The reason I don't like Green Tide is only because the clock element, but the clock wasn't really an element in our games at all. Okay.
Because I think you're at a really interesting place. I've seen a lot of times. This is what I was thinking about yesterday. First of all, I'm ecstatic that you had such a good time and that Green Tide's still fun. I'm a little bit shocked that Green Tide is still fun, but I'm not Noah.
That's fun when my opponents are slow and the clock becomes a complicated situation for them, and then it creates feel bads. If everyone's right on time, which all my games finished, right? Like if the clock is right on time, then no one really cares. Green Tide's great.
Well, you played 3 of the best players in Canada. If they weren't playing quick enough, I don't know what to do. So, okay, so here's what I'm thinking about that. I think monofaction people are really interesting because they kind of develop this skill set. But the mono of that army, where they just know all the things, and when you play them, they're very mature in their knowledge of what the army can do. And I think there's a real advantage to that route. We'll call that the Doogs route. And then there's the people that meta jump. The Art of War guys are a great example of this, where they're jumping from list to list. And part of their core strength is that they understand how the game's played by all those different factions. It also means that they're adapting with the meta in a different way than the mono faction people are. And I think that there's an argument that there's not an argument. I think it's easy to justify that that's two different ways to get good at 40K. What I see that goes wrong for people, completely unrelated to Noah and an experience Colin has had and observed, is the people that monofaction and stay on the same list too long. Because what happens is the meta responds, and even if Green Tide isn't the thing that people are planning for, you can't know if all the new Chaos detachments are going to be impossible for Green Tide until it's happened, right? Till they're out, till we know what those things are solved into. And if all of those things have 30, 40 attack murderous Chaos units, Noah, you're not going to play Green Tide, right? So what I'm thinking is, this is like when I was playing Ynnari, and the meta crapped on Ynnari, and I kept rolling. And then the meta crapped on Ynnari, and I kept rolling, and it got frustrating, and I was trying so hard to make Ynnari work that I was not improving as a player. So what I have been wondering is, did you have a better shot of winning that event if you didn't take Green Tide?
I don't think so. So I know what this is really, so like, one is the Death Guard list was a really good list played by a really good player on a mission where he had the advantage going second.
Okay.
Right. And I lost by 6 points to the best player. That to me is that's an 11-9, right? Against the best player in Canada on one of the worst mission conditions I could have created for myself. That's great. I don't care that's an anomaly. That's a thing that happens, right?
Yeah.
The thing that happened with Stu is actually a mistake. Is kind of what you said, but in a different way. I've gotten so locked in and playing Green Tide a very specific way that when it came up to it, I had this moment at lunch where I considered taking fixed because I knew that the secondary game was important in the mission and that the primary was going to be low because it was supply drop.
Okay.
The one where, they disappear.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought I'm going to stick to my normal game plan. And then I drew 9 dead secondaries. If I would have taken, the math is pretty clear. If I would have taken fixed and gotten essentially 30 of my secondaries, I would have won the game.
Sure.
Right. And I could have taken, I could have easily taken Storm and gotten 16 points on Storm. Easy. No questions asked. And I could have taken something like Assassinate or whatever and gotten 16-ish points on Assassinate. That's 32 points, and that's a 1 game.
Yeah, but let me talk about Green Tide for a second. And I'm going to talk about Green Tide, but first I'm going to compliment Noah so he doesn't get imposter syndrome.
Okay.
I believe it's hard to play and I think that you do an incredible job, and I think it would be more prevalent if it was easier to play. So let me start with that. That said, Noah tends to play skew armies. Knights, Green Tide are the two things.
Like all or wide.
Yeah, well, but a core part of both of those games is your opponent unable to deal with the thing that you brought.
Yeah, the reason I like Green Tide.
Hold on. I got a whole thing here.
All right.
And I think that over an incredibly long term will make you a worse player. I think that when we were doing pairings at the 8s, you kept saying, well, I see everything through the glasses of Green Tide. I don't think that's great, Noah. I think that you're probably getting stale and stagnant playing Green Tide all the time when the meta is going so crazy around you. I'm ecstatic for you to play other armies. I couldn't be more excited. I want to see Noah play armies that are a balanced approach to 40K because I think it's going to make you really interesting to talk to.
Okay.
You're already interesting, but like Green Tide, I'm just going to tell you from a person who plays 40K, it's stupid and it should feel bad about itself. It is an absolute crap show that's awful for the game. Completely agree. It is the epitome of, can my opponent even play the game? And you're going to have one or two games where they can. In this tournament, you had like 5 rounds where they could, which is ridiculous. In general, you're going to have only a couple games where they can. And the rest of the time, you're going to play 700 models for no reason.
Yeah, I mean,
it's fun. I'm being a little bit snide.
I know. You are. I would say that the reason I've liked Green Tide so much is because it has a stat check layer.
Yes.
It has a shenanigans layer, right? Blood surge and regrow.
I got no problem with that. I think that's great. It's the stat check thing that I'm making fun of.
And then it has a huge flexibility thing that I really enjoy because it has 11 MSU units and a bunch of big blocks.
Right.
So it can play primary and secondary really well. But you're right. So like if they pass the stat check, they still have to deal with how hard the list is to play against for all the shenanigans and the scoring.
Right.
If they don't pass the stat check, then it's kind of like an auto win.
And I don't have any problem with the second half of what you just said.
Right.
My problem, I don't mind your rule set being hard for someone to play against and they have to try a little differently and they got to do different stuff. That's fine with me. We talked about auto losses last week.
Yeah,
I would like there to be less games where someone's book can't deal with an army.
Yeah, okay, fair enough.
Green Tide is an army where people's codexes can't deal with it. I don't think the Eldar Codex can deal with it. If we go to a tournament, like a single elimination, and I know you're my first round opponent, and I'm building for you with the Ynnari Codex, I would have to get Team USA Ynnari people together, and we would have to work really hard, and it would still be frustrating, and I'd lose.
You just take maximum Wind Rider bikes.
I don't think that does it. I don't think it does it. So the problem with the Wind Rider detachment is it can't stay far enough away from people, and eventually you charge it and touch it, and then it dies.
Sure.
So I think that's it's fine that Green Tide exists, but it's the same issue I have with Knights. We have these things in the game that aren't playing 40K like everybody else is, and as a result, there's a whole bunch of armies that can't deal with it. In 8th edition, when Knights first became prevalent, they had T12 on everything, and that was really brutal at the time, or T8 and everything, maybe at the time, I can't remember. They were very durable at the time, and a lot of codexes didn't have heavy shooting or heavy punching to deal with them, period, end of story. That was just, they had not put those tools in the codexes, and I just think that's really bad for the game. So the alternative of this is that you are getting used to playing a skew, and I think it'll be good for you to not play a skew for at least a half dozen games. That's where I'm at on it.
You know what? I can see that. Well, I have about 20 minutes left on mine, and I would like to hear about Colin playing 40K now.
Yeah. So we talked last week about my desire to play something that doesn't auto lose to certain matchups, and I don't know that I did that, for the record, but Noah talked me through the different armies that he thought I should try. I watched the clips. I was extremely rude about Space Marines, which I laughed a lot about when I was editing clips for social media. By the way, if you don't follow us on social media, I make a lot of silly things, and often the clips are not in the actual show, and they're outtakes. You can find us on TikTok, Instagram, TikTok, Tickety Top. You can find us on Tickety Top, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Okay. So we decided on World Eaters, which was funny because almost every time I've played against World Eaters, I thought their models looked terrible because it's just how people paint Chaos. So I was like, oh, I don't really like the models. I don't typically like how Chaos plays. But in Age of Sigmar, I played Khorne Blood Surge or whatever the heck it was called a long time ago. And it was basically CSM in Age of Sigmar equivalent with Khorne Demons. And I really liked it. I liked playing. I had giant bricks of bloodletters that ran across the table. And I thought that was really great. So Noah tells me that there's this joint arms World Eaters detachment where you get both World Eaters and Demons. And I played it for 2 games. I played it into Alex McDougall's Final Day list, a list he has 1,000 reps in. It's a great list played by a great player. And then I played Chuck trying to figure out the Zangor T-Sons detachment. And both games were super interesting. In the first game with Dukes, there were 4 times in the first 3 turns where I said, hold on. Now, Dukes and I are very common practice partners. This is Alex McDougall we're talking about. And we will stop the game and have a whole conversation about a thing that's happened that's important. And we had 3 different moments in the first 3 turns, so 4 different moments in the first 3 turns, where we identified that I had made a significant error that would have made my army perform better. Totally fine. My first game with World Eaters, I laughed about it, totally fine. If I lost by 6. If I make any of those differently, we're head to head against an incredible list played by an incredible player. The mistakes I made are silly. We're going to talk about the Bloodletter strat in a minute. Actually, we'll talk about it now. So the army is one strat and some others that are neat. So the army works like this. You have World Eaters units and you have Khorne Demonkin units. The World Eaters units get World Eaters rules. The Khorne Demonkin units get Khorne Demon rules, basically. The list I was playing was more Chaos Demons doing things than World Eaters doing things. Also, I had Forge Fiends, which, by the way, are incredible in that detachment because of the rerolling hits at 18. Oh my god! And that was incredible through both games. Just take strength 10, AP 3 damage with Burt. Like I shot a 20-man Zangor unit with it, Noah, getting blast 4 on each gun. It was re-rolling everything. They had an invul that didn't matter. So okay, so the army is neat. The World Eaters having a bunch of shooting is weird because the World Eaters rules have nothing to do with shooting, and it's a little bit like, hey, I got sustained on this turn that nobody's going to go into combat. But the stratagem that's a real problem is the Bloodletter detachment stratagem. Here's how it works. And I'm going to say it in the exact restrictions that GW has put on it. When any unit dies, Noah's army, my army, knights, whatever, for any reason, in any phase, I can spend a CP and I can put a unit of Bloodletters wholly within 9 inches of the last model that was pulled. End of stratagem. No phase restriction, no charge restriction, no distance from the target, none of it. Here are some broken things you can do. I have a unit of Juggernauts, Juggies. They're called Blood Crushers in 40k, I think. And they charge and do what can only be described as a silly amount of mortals. I did 15 on one of the charges, Noah. And it's just a lot. And so if that happens, remember that charged mortals, I've always thought charged mortals should happen in the fight phase at the start of the fight phase, but charged mortals happen when it happens in the charge phase. And so if the unit dies right then, you can spend a CP and bring those Bloodletters in 9 inches away from you with no restriction. They can be 1 inch off from someone, and you can then charge because it's still the mother effing charge phase. That's not okay.
No.
Also, in the first turn against Alex, I moved up the Goremongers to the middle of the table, and I used a couple things to try to kill his dude who scored 10. Alex was like, well, I went first and got 10 secondary points for putting a 50-point model on the middle objective, like one of those situations. It was a Lictor, so it was like stealth even. It was obnoxious. So I put all this firepower into the Lictor to kill it, because if I kill it, I drop Bloodletters 9 inches behind, which is in his deployment zone. Mm-hmm. And then I charge the Ridge Runners and touch all of them, and my turn's completely different. Okay. So I forget that the Goremongers have the grenade strat. If I remember that they have the grenade strat, the Lictor has no chance to survive. So if I do that, and I grenade strat that Lictor, and I drop Bloodletters in his deployment zone on the first turn, I feel like that's probably more than a 6-point swing.
A lot.
Yeah. But at the same time, what an incredibly terrible and toxic thing to do to someone on the first turn of the game. And there is a whole bunch of armies that will have no answer to that. I'm very worried about what elves are going to say to Bloodletters dropping next to them, right? Warp Spiders are a big help there. unless they come in at a time where they don't get to Overwatch.
Can I share with you a play that I saw made that you would have made your heart happy?
Yeah.
Okay. This is Ynnari versus the Bloodletter, this exact situation.
Oh my God. Okay.
Okay. There's a really, really scary unit of Banshees that needs to make landfall next turn, and it's going against the Khorne army, and they've got some shooting elements, and they really want to shoot, right? That Banshee unit is going to get into, I think it was like an 8 bounty unit or something the guy was running, and murder it, and then just like, it's going to be a bad day. And they're already kind of getting taken apart. The dude gets a line on a Forge Fiend on a random like little unit. I think it was Squad of Guardians or something that like were raid something small that was poked out.
Okay.
Shot the shit out of it, killed it.
Yep.
It turns out within 9 inches of that was the other side of the Banshee unit, and made a ring of bloodletters around the Banshees, and then said, "Would you like to lethal intent?"
Yeah.
It was real bad.
Banshees strike first, and they're not going to die to the bloodletters, but still.
No, it wasn't even to kill them. It was that they just didn't get to do anything for a turn.
Still, the Banshees are now not doing anything on your turn. So
you're also not lethal intenting that turn, which is also wild.
So the other parts, so that stratagem's not okay. It needs a 6-inch requirement. I think charging should be fine, because the reality is you're bringing in a crappy unit that's terrifying of being overwatched. It's not a crappy unit. It's actually a good unit that's fragile.
Right.
And it's afraid of being overwatched. I lost a lot of bloodletters to Overwatch this weekend, even trying to avoid it. So I don't want the strat to go away, because I think it's doing incredible work to make the army competitive. But in its current state, it could not feel more toxic. The rest of the army, I think, is unbelievably cool. The Khorne thing, where every time you kill someone on a 3-up, you get a blood point, and then you cash in blood points to buy permanent upgrades to your demons for the rest of the game. That's unbelievably cool. The strat where when you kill a character, you can get D3 blood tithe points and immediately spy a thing. That's the main way I bought them, for those that are wondering about playing the army, because you don't get enough ahead of the turn where you need the thing. So against Chuck, who had a lot of psychic attacks, I went in, I YOLO'd into a character in order to get the points, in order to trigger the Feel No Pain on Mortal and Psychics going into his turn. So I think that the army is incredibly neat. I think it's important to put World Eaters in things in that punch. I think that's a really important part of what you need in the army, because the World Eaters rules are incredibly strong, even though they don't have advance and charge now. I rolled 10 turns worth of these rolls, and I will tell you that a lot of the time you get to pick which 2 close combat abilities you have. I'm going to have Sustained and Dev is incredibly good on an army that I didn't have a lot of close combat that was World Eaters. So that's a thing that I'm thinking about. My biggest thing I hated was 8-bound. I had 2 units of 3, 150 points. They're not durable enough for 50 points apiece. The scouting is neat, but they don't do enough. They ended up in a combat with a 5 of them ended up in a combat with a Mutileth Vortex Beast, much to my dismay. And they just whiffed over and over and over and over again into that thing, because World Eaters don't have rerolls. And so you're dealing with this thing that doesn't hit, because it's not infantry. I'm hitting on 3s and I'm winning on 5s at AP2. It has an invul and a Feel No Pain, right? So they're for that job, but at 150 points, there's so many better things you could bring. I'm currently thinking that instead of 2 Forge Fiends, 3 Forge Fiends is better. And I'm also thinking that the Mauler Fiend is probably dope with the World Eaters special abilities on it.
I think dropping 2 squads, the 2 squads of 8-bound, and taking at least to start 2 squads of Spawn, which still leaves you 140, 150 points afterwards.
At least 140, which isn't enough to buy any of the things I want.
You should be, but the Spawn I just think are too good with the scouting and advance and charge, and they have decent anti-infantry melee. So
yeah, what I thought about doing, I had 2 units of Fleshhounds in the army, and while that feels really good, if I drop one of those Fleshhound units down to Jackals, I think that because of Sticky and 10 people in the unit for 65 points, I think that's actually better. Because what the second unit of dogs kept doing in my army is falling back in my backline, stopping Deep Strike. And one of them was like, I'm going to land on an objective and do the thing. And the other one's like, I'm going to pick up from the backfield and then land in the backfield again. I think a Jackal unit that had advanced over to an objective and stickied it would have been really good in that game.
Cool.
So that might be the change I make that gets me 2 units of skirt. That should, I think, get me 2 units of spawn, which I'm excited about, and also get me a Mauler Fiend, which I think is really... I think the reason I'm excited about the Mauler Fiend is that the Forge Fiends don't punch, and so it makes it so that it can chill amongst the Forge Fiends and go get in front of them and charge something, and then it beats the crap out of stuff.
So my hard stop is in less than 10 minutes, but KR has specifically called out that he has heard that Scarbrand is good. Could you tell us about your experience with Scarbrand and the Punchy?
Yeah, Scarbrand is very angry at everyone, and he would like everyone to die. I found him to be incredibly powerful. The advance and charge is great. I discovered that he starts on the table, and the Blood Crushers and the Bloodletters start in Deep Strike. That's kind of the vibe. The Blood Crushers are way too big of a footprint. They go through walls, but they're way too big of a footprint, and they get move blocked too easily. So I think you have to ingress them in order to catch a corner, and then people are screwed because they're nutty in how much damage they do. Angron's +1 attack aura is hysterical. I had a hard time getting him. I had a hard time keeping the World Eaters together.
You mean Scarbrand, right?
Yeah, sorry. What I say, Angron?
Yeah.
Similar in my brain. I know they aren't, but Scarbrand is really interesting. What I struggled with in World Eaters was keeping things near each other to get aura benefits. A lot of the stratagems are, I'm a demon unit and I make a World Eaters unit better, or I'm a World Eaters unit and I make a demon unit better. Lots of that stuff is garbage. I'm going to give the World Eaters a 5-up invul. Okay. The good World Eater stuff already has that. Like, there's a bunch of weirdness there that I need to get better about. And one of the things is that Scarbrand needs to go with friends. He's incredible. He beats the crap out of stuff. But I think if I, on the edge of the table, if I had him and the Mauler Fiend together, and the Mauler Fiend's getting +1 attack, and you've got to deal with both of them, I think that's really great. So that's where I was at on that. I think a number of the strats are actually garbage in the army because of the restrictions that are on them.
Mm-hmm.
But the Bloodletter strat's incredible. The units are really good. It functions great. Bloodletters feel exactly right. We hit pretty hard, but we're not reliable and we're not durable. Oh my God, I got 4-up invuls on Bloodletters in both games. That was so fun. So in my first game, I lost barely. My second game against the Zangor detachment was fascinating. Zangors are super neat. I think that detachment is real. I really, really, really do. But it was extremely hard for Chuck to deal with. I went in, hit him really hard. He came back, hit me really hard. I went in, hit him really hard, and then I still had stuff left. Like, we just had this murder fest. So I'm going to play the army 2 or 3 more times this weekend. I'm going to adjust the list a bit. I'd like to take it to an RTT. I think that would be a really good experience for me. It is a very different thing than Ynnari while feeling like Ynnari. Chaos Ynnari is very much what it feels like at times.
Cool.
But I really dig it, and I'm glad that I played it, and I'm looking forward to playing it more. That's where I'm at.
That is awesome. I think that it's I'm glad you're having fun. And even if this isn't the army where you land, even if you try something else and skitter around a bit, I think that it seems like you're having a great time with it.
Yeah.
You said Chuck. Didn't you tell me that Chuck really liked playing against it and wanted to play it?
So Chuck has a lot of painted Zangors. So Chuck's like, there's a Zangor detachment, I'm ready, and he brings Zangors. Okay. And I'm telling him, especially when I'm learning an army, I tell you all the stratagems, the special abilities on all my units, and the enhancements I have. And I go through all of it, whether you want to hear it or not, because that's a big part of how I learn it. And so I went through it with Chuck, explaining it, and he's like, I like your army better than mine, and I don't know what to do about it. And then we started playing, and he's like, I own almost all these models. I would just need to buy 8-bound. And I said, funny thing about that, I do not like paying 150 points for 3 8-bound. He's like, oh, well, I'm even more excited then. So he was really excited about it. I think he's still working on Zangor stuff. He really likes T-Suns. My flowchart is, does Eldar meet my requirements? Then Eldar, and then we go down to other armies. Chuck's is T-Suns. And actually, no, it's Zinch Demons. That's Chuck's Zinch Demons. So, yeah. So, anyways, this weekend I'm going to play into Death Guard. I don't know what the other thing I'll play into yet is. I do. A whole bunch of people are coming over. I have to figure out. I'd like to play Noah.
Death Guard?
Maybe I'll play Noah.
What? Is Donald playing Death Guard?
Begwell.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's Mortarian's Hammer is what he's playing. Is that the?
It's one of the three really good ones are Mortarian's Hammer, Champions are Plague Champions, and Virulent Victorum. They're all three good for three different reasons. Virulent Victorum.
Okay, great. Sloppy Sniper.
They're all good for three different reasons.
Okay.
One is good because it can give full rerolls to hit and wound to the Plague Marine squad that can instant delete multiple things in a turn.
Okay.
And with sustained 5s and all the things, which is great. It also has sticky objectives. Mortarian's Hammer is cool because it can choose for you to be afflicted. Basically, it picks 2 units that are outside of 12 of friendly units, and those units automatically become afflicted every turn. So he can put his disease on you at range, then has a bunch of good strats to support vehicles. And then Plague Champs is good.
Mortarian's Hammer.
What? That was Mortarian's Hammer.
Yeah, that sounds like Bagwell.
Okay, he's very Bagwell. Very big.
He played Monster Mash Nids previously, for those that don't know Josh.
Yeah, it can be kind of Monster Mash Death Guard, right?
Yeah.
And then the last one is Plague Champions, which is what Donald likes, which has a fights first stratagem and gets to change their disease every turn. So it's very toolbox.
Yeah, that's neat. Okay.
All three are really, really good. They all run 3 of the Shooty Blight drones. They all run 3 to 6 Death Shroud.
Okay. All right. Okay. I think that's our show. Thank you, everybody. We love doing this. We have more people watching this week than we've ever had before, and I love that. Please come. Please enjoy us live. It's more fun. We're going to start doing a thing where we answer any question that's asked of us. So I think that'll be a fun way to do it. Okay, everybody, please have a fantastic week, and we'll be back next Wednesday, hopefully with new rules to talk about. And lots of 40K will be played this weekend. Hopefully Noah and I get to play, because that's okay.
Yay!
Bye, everybody. We'll see you next week.
Bye.